just touched on the real, I think, the basis of it, which is education. And I think one thing that I found talking to the artists who've been involved in Penang in the recent years is that, or part of the research I sort of found was that in Malaysia, particularly in Penang, a lot of the education is not institutionally based, it's mentorship based. So usually somebody, we were just talking about this downstairs, but one strain of mentorship, student-master relationships has been the late Dato Chia Tien Teng, who then taught another artist who's here called Chon Hon Fat. And then Chon Hon Fat was the master or teacher of a very local contemporary guy called Alex Leong. All the way through that mentorship, it's been oil watercolor based, it's been scenery based, street scene based as well. And Mr. Chon Hon Fat has become very well known actually for his paintings of Penang's and Malaysia's street scenes. And then Alex Leong has become just as well known for exactly that. So I think in order to call yourself a hub, that aspect, whether it's teaching in an institution or whether it's teaching mentorship, student-master relationships, needs to be quite well established. And I think the whole point is that unless you're lucky enough to be in a certain set or meet a certain person, you would find yourself hard-pressed as a local artist to begin a career in art, because one of the huge challenges is, of course, familial expectations. It wasn't long ago where people were starving in Malaysia, and there's a whole generation that does not wish their sons or daughters to take on anything that's not financially viable, that's not stable, that doesn't come with a good pension, and in the end allows them to build a family of their own and actually look after the parents when they're a bit older. So in order to get around that sort of perception of the artist and art, to make this idea of learning from a master a bit more well known or a bit more accessible is probably the first port of call. And I think a lot of things in the future will be doing that in Penang. I mean, the Penang Arts District and maybe the area that's built for that purpose, for workshops, and for, that could be a good hub. One of the examples I found was the guys from KL, the Rumour Studio guys. They learnt a lot from one particular guy, Abang Adi, which means Brother Adi, which is actually Adiputra Masri, who's quite a famous artist here. And he, along with some other people, started the Publica Art Row in KL. Now, these guys who learnt under him, they all went into university because they couldn't take fine art. They went into either engineering or architecture or electronics, mechatronics, stuff which is so far removed from fine art that, it was almost lucky of them to sort of break away from that traditional education, go it alone for a bit on the streets of KL, and then find themselves in a situation where they can actually learn skills and also how to be an artist from somebody who's tried and tested. So, depending on how it happens, whether it's institutional education or whether it's a focus on that master-student relationship, I think probably to be able for Penang to call itself a cultural hub in the near future, a lot of attention needs to be put on that, I think, yeah.
Thanks, James. Lee Khai, what are your thoughts on that?
Hub. Let the politician talk about us being a hub. I think it's good enough for us to be a big spoke, a good spoke. I think it's about education. We have lost 3 generations of people to education because of how the politicians have meddled with education. In that, art suffered. All right. Anyway, yesterday, a State Art Gallery committee meeting, we are just going to, we decided to write a petition to the Education Ministry because they've just taken batik out of the syllabus in school. whatever for, or what, what they have in their mind. All right, so we'll be making a point there. So we really, really need to work on our education. I've thrown out this challenge. Name me one full-time art curator in Penang. Full-time professional art curator in Penang. Zero.
Lee Khai.
No, I'm not. Even the director of the Penang Museum and State Art Gallery is not a full-time curator. She wears many hats. She's a museum curator, she's an art curator, she's an administrator. No one. I cannot name one person. And that is where we really are. All right, so, and there are lots of hard work ahead. And I always say that people like me have to work myself out of a role. We need art professionals. We need to be able to nurture a group, a base of art professionals who can bring us to the next level. All right, we are ambitious. We are very happy. I'm very happy that we have the Penang Art District project still going on, although the physical space is taking some time to come into fruition. But Stephanie is with PAD. She's heading Penang Art District. We are definitely coming up with a lot of programs, educational programs. We want to encourage art writing. We want to do also curatorial programs, and all these are sorely lacking still in Penang, right? And we need to work towards those things, and we need that. And it takes time, and it takes everyone to be in it, and it takes young people to want to be involved in it. Right? And I hope that with this proliferation, whether it's mural or this contemporary art scene that is happening now, will give some impetus and encouragement to young people to want to be in there. And to think that art can be a viable career.
Thanks, Lee Khai. Dr. Doris, do you have any thoughts on having traveled around different countries regionally and also internationally, especially in Germany, because Germany is quite a creative hub in itself, like Berlin and also Frankfurt that's coming up now as attraction for young artists. What's your view about Penang having that aspiration?
Yeah, I think the education and the awareness in society, what is art all about, is one thing, to appreciate art at all, and not just, art, you can't earn money with it, there's no value at all. So this mindset has to be changed, and it can only be changed by education. The other thing is, the more present art is in society, in the community, the more people will be aware of what's going on and that there is art. And in Germany, we have quite a good network of every city will have a cultural department, only committed for arts and culture, no tourism involved, no. And if then this tourism part is only a smaller part, because Germany, in the smaller cities, they don't have so much tourists. So then we have a kind of good network, museums. Every city has a museum with different departments, and we have people who have enough money to run galleries. That means we have professional space. And this is the most I find is a gap here in Penang, is a professional space with air condition, with nice walls, with someone who is having enough money to repaint after an exhibition, to have the light set up, to have the aircon, to have someone doing the hard work. Usually it's the curator or the artist or both together, but you don't have this space. Hinbas Depot, artist with valuable artwork will never exhibit in Hinbas Depot because of the aircon, because of the problem with the humidity and the heat. So this is a kind of quality dropout criteria. Even if you like, you would not, because it's too sensitive from the climate. So I think there must be more spaces which can be easily maybe reused or transformed or whatever. And in Germany we have the budget. And we have also a lot of volunteers who are working together in groups, like in societies or what, to get things done.
Thanks, Dr. Doris. I like to relate it back to what Fan Chon earlier shared about how art is experienced in Penang in different spaces and how private spaces have turned into public spaces and vice versa. I think it's a kind of like a battle as well between having to retain that identity and also having quality spaces to bring in content that you say in terms of high quality art and dealing with the environment around this public space where it's less controlled. I think we're kind of in that position, trying to figure out where's the right direction to be. Going back to the question about Penang being a creative hub, Fan Chon, you earlier said that it's an advantage for practitioners to practice here because it's smaller, it's a smaller pool of talent, and therefore it's easier to be seen and easier to be known. But if turning Penang into a creative hub will attract more practitioners into Penang, do you think that would increase the competition, and would that be good or bad? What are your views on that?
Can I just respond about Creative Hub briefly before? Because do Penang need a creative hub? I think Penang, in a way, is a hub already, in a very organic way. I mean, we got Himbas, we got so many venues here. I mean, we got Georgetown Festival, we got Georgetown literally Festival is, I think, one of the more important programs in Penang. And I think I don't necessarily believe in physical infrastructure, like what Lee Khai say about leave that to the politician. And I think those physical infrastructure usually are for press coverage and, to get their political mileage and popular votes and all that. So what we really need instead of hardware, I think, is software. And if the money from the state is to build a creative hub, I would say use the money to build an art institution that will provide jobs for the artists. And also it will produce more, hopefully, thinker and talents and artists in the future for Penang. Penang, I mean, compared to Jogja, Jakarta, all these cities in Southeast Asia, for having just one university, maybe two colleges in one city and wanting itself to be a creative hub, it's really not easy, So I would say use the money to please have an art institution if this is a wish list. So I do think software is a lot more important. Trainings, workshops, for writers, curators. We need all these talents before we need another physical infrastructure. I mean, I don't agree. I don't think we always need air conditioning. I mean, everything rots, and this is the tropics. I think we don't need to make work that will last forever. It's difficult for the collectors. So, am I making any sense?
Whether work lasts or not.
Software, yes or no, but I mean, if you want to have job and you want to take over commissioned work, then art is not anymore free.
Yeah. Yes.
And then you have a problem. So you can't ask the government, I want to be an artist, but at the same time, please give me a job. So you have to decide. And this is the challenge for every artist in every city all over the world. And they starve and they will work hard and they work like hell, 12 hours, 14 hours, because they are non-stop working. So therefore, this one has to be separated. You can't ask for job as an artist. You have to be good enough to approach people, or you have to find your network. On the other hand, the government has to support the local artist, and they have to make chances happen, opportunities, exchange programs, master classes, all these training things to maybe reduced what we have in Germany. We have reduced rental. If you have work in studio in one house and you are an artist, you can get a reduce of your rental and things like that. So all this kind of stuff can be done, but you can't ask for a job.
That's the idea of Penang Art District, what you have described, to provide that platform It's going to be a space. 9 acres is going to be something that no one can afford to miss in that sense, all right? Because it's such a huge thing, and that itself, I think, provides a magnet, an audience for the artists. And like I started with saying, art is not a football team that you need 11 players. Art is that individual doing what you're passionate about. All right.
Well, it depends if you're someone like Jeff Koons or Ai Weiwei, you got a whole
Jeff
factory.
Koons didn't come. No, he didn't come from nowhere.
Yeah,
He came from nowhere in a sense. He didn't inherit the factory.
Wall Street.
He didn't inherit the factory. All right. He worked hard at it, and you cannot expect everyone to be Jeff Koons. That's why I say it's a very individual thing. What the authorities can do at most is to provide certain platforms, certain infrastructure. For example, the Penang Art District. We want to do a multidiscipline art residency. We want to provide art space, reduce rent for artists. We want to provide, let's say, print facilities that a lot of artists cannot afford. All right, but if you provide a space with that facilities, you can then help a lot of artists. We want to build kilns. We want to have sculpture facilities for stones and wood and everything. We need machineries. Those things we can expect the government to do, and I'm pushing very hard and lobby very hard. And we need everyone to lobby. Lobbying takes, it's not I said it once and the politicians don't care. You have to say it until they do it. All right, you have to lobby until they do it. That's what lobbying is. All right, so I hope you all can join me in lobbying for all these facilities for the wider art community. All right, in a sense, artists are all selfish. All right, because you have to be convicted that your thing is the best. All right, when we talk about the art district, and first thing the art community is, oh, why spend so much money on this? All right, the underlying complaint seems to be, you know, I have the best thing in the world. Why don't you support me and give me the money to do what I want to do? That seems to be the underlying complaint. All right, but we cannot do that. Ultimately, resources is scarce. All right, and we need to think about infrastructure that will benefit everyone.
I think I think it's probably about time to bring up the big elephant in the room, which is tourism. I think is the big thing. Well, bigger than these elephants all put together, actually. And the thing is tourism. And I think what art in Penang very quickly was seen as a moneymaker, and especially when it comes to tourism. It was only in 2014 that some of the biggest magazines and publications in the whole world were mentioning Penang as either a place to visit, a place to retire, a place to live, a place to see before you die. If you told somebody that would have been covered in the New York Times, by CNN, by Lonely Planet, by the Guardian Travel Magazine, the Sunday Times, I mean, you know, if you'd asked somebody in 2010 when that will happen, I bet you they wouldn't have said, you know, in 4 years' time. So I think a large part of that was, of course, then that there was the murals, but also there was the idea of this art hub. You know, there was art everywhere. And if you link that then to what you mentioned before in terms of if you have an art hub, is that bad for competition? Well, no, because one of the things that the tourism angle has actually given Penang is that recognition, which means that a lot of people will, either artists will come to Penang or be interested in teaching in Penang or contributing to the art scene. Competition in any art scene is incredibly important because suddenly you go from quantity, which I think Penang has got licked, into quality. So you'll start weeding the wheat from the chaff. And not only in terms of quality, but in terms of people who actually can do it. Being an artist is difficult, usually because it just takes such a long time to get your name at a level where you can actually make a free artistic career out of it, instead of being reliant on commissions where there's no, I mean, it's not about freedom, it's just about you have to do what the client's paying for. So that amount of people, that quantity of people coming in will be especially very good for Penang. And actually, it's probably the next stage. The people who will stick with it, the people who will carry on through despite receiving a lot of criticism, maybe, despite even being politically repressed sometimes. The people who fight through all of that become then the next great artists. I mean, Zunar is going to go down in history as one of the most important artistic figures in the last generation, if not century, in Malaysia, purely because he stuck with it under political repression, stuff like that. So it's not all about politics, but it is about money. And the more artists you have in a place, and the more art that can be explored, you will suddenly find that it will suddenly shrink itself down into more quality, which I think Penang, starting from what it has done and that touristic angle, it will happen, but maybe that's the direction it should go in. You should be encouraging more and more people through education, through giving them avenues, just a place to work, the importance of a studio, right? And then suddenly it will shrink down. People always drop off from the wayside. So, and the people you have left should be, in theory, the best you've got. So.
Artists are producers, unique consumers, and somehow politicians think that consumers are tourists. I'm always against an idea. I'm always telling all the politicians I lobby to say that we do things well for the locals. When you do things well for the locals, all right, the good tourists will come because you are doing things well for your local. And that's what we strive to do, provide a foundation, provide facilities, provide infrastructure so that the locals can enjoy it and embrace it. Then you have something vibrant going on. Tourists will come, don't worry.
Dr. Doris?
I must share my opinion to the term artist or producer. Producer is a production. Production means you don't think anymore, you just produce what is asked for. It's commissioned work. So if you are an artist, you usually will do some producing, but this is not the free art we were talking. This is producing for a market. You're targeting already the market. You're targeting the money, the dollars, whatever to sell. If you want to make art as an artist, then you create an artwork, you create an art piece, you design or what, but you don't produce. That means if you don't get the concept right, you will not have a line between your two fields of work. And usually if you want to be successful as an artist, you try to have something which is produced, and then you will have a line in your work which is fine art. So the same thing refers to the spaces, to the galleries, to the museums. If you don't have your own profile, you can't anymore differentiate, oh, is this now an artwork or is this the decoration of the pub or the coffee shop or what? So you have to, or the awareness has to be there even for the artist, but also for the one who is having a showroom. What exactly does he want? And does he want the hobbyist, the young artist? Does he want the higher? So the whole profile must be very clear, otherwise the tourist thing is not working. Because tourists will be completely confused and they will only get one big mixed up soup and they cannot anymore decide and they won't buy. So if you want to have buyers from the touristic spot and from the touristic market, you need to have a real good setup, as well as from the artist, as well as from the museum, the galleries, so that the tourists don't choose bullshit, and this will spoil the reputation. This is the bad thing about it. So,
and let me respond to that. Okay, art production. When I say production, of course, it's a dichotomy when I use the term production as a consumer. Art production, of course, has to come with creativity and passion. All right, you are doing an artist that don't sell at all is not an artist. I mean, let's put it this way: unless you serve, they're very, very unique type of artists that serve a certain purpose. all right, for whatever purpose. But let's face it, for an art industry, all right, Penang don't have an art industry, I would say. All right, Penang is a good place to produce art. People love the vibes of Penang. Of Penang. All right, Indonesian senior artists tell me you have better vibes than Bali. All right, so, but we don't have so much of an industry. I mean, end of the day, when you talk about industry, it has to involve buying and selling. All right, and in that sense, artists are producers. All right, of course, you have to produce good artwork. You have to produce something that you really want to do. Not just because, okay, a good artist is someone who does things for himself out of his own passion, and the public seems and happens to love it and pay you money for it, that you can continue to do your art. All right, that's a good artist. A bad artist is one who say, what does the consumer wants and let me print. And you can never satisfy consumers because there are 101 kind of consumers. Everyone wants a different thing. All right, so a good artist is someone who can lead your consumers to where you want them to go rather than you go to them. All right, in that sense, I talk about art production.
So, Fan Chon, as an artist, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of tourism and how you even think of tourism when it comes to producing your work and all that? And when people talk about, introducing or including tourism as part of the arts and culture policy, what are your immediate responses to those kind of statements?
I think if we assume everyone works 10 to 12 hours a day, and regardless if you're artist or not, that 10 to 12 hours you have, then you make choice how you want to devise your time. So when you're really desperate, you know that there's a flow of tourists on the street in front of you. You can make t-shirt and sell. That might compromise your practice in a bit, but it's a short-term measure for you to solve your financial problem. So I'm just saying, in general, there's opportunity in Georgetown. There's money to be made. And also, how do you balance that by not compromising your own artistic integrity in the process? But at the same time, you can also be relaxed about certain medium like T-shirt, and you can also ask critical questions through T-shirt printing or whatnot. I think that's the great thing about being in Malaysia or in Georgetown in general. There is this very gray area about art and very relaxed attitude about art that I think artists could capitalize on that or, turn that to their favor. So, and actually, I just want to respond to something Lee Khai also said. If you could add one more thing to your very long lobbying list, can you also please make Penang one of the first states in Malaysia to have a completely transparent funding option for cultural practitioners?
I've already lobbied that and lobbying that. And it can't be my job alone. It needs everyone. Just like art writing. I've been pondering about this issue. Why is the Western art so looked up to, so sought after? One of the things is that they talk incessantly about their art. They write incessantly about their art. When you have 100 writers writing on one artist, that has to make a difference as to one person writing on that artist or no one writing on that artist. Lobbying is the same. We need many people lobbying the same thing, say the same thing, use all sorts of avenue. All right, Penang is the easiest place for you to meet politicians, to meet even the chief minister. All right, it's so much easier than anywhere else in Malaysia to meet the highest official in the state. Use that opportunity, lobby.
Yes.
And trust me, I've been lobbying on that transparency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it true that the Penang State, of course you don't speak directly for the
I don't at all.
Yeah.
I don't
but
at all.
Is it true Penang yearly allowance for art and culture is 6 million?
Not true. I mean,
not true.
Not true. I think the problem is this. Everything is very ad hoc. All right. Georgetown Festival, how much you should get is very ad hoc.
Right.
All right.
They've been given free every year.
Not every year.
Not
In the
every-
beginning was what, 500,000, it became 800,000. I was a lawyer involved in that. Finally it came to about 2 million, 3 million. You know, this year I think TLM guessing 3 million. I'm having issue, why 3 million but you do it for 2 weeks, and you know. But the problem is that everything is very ad hoc. So I told the politicians, pull the money together, do it very transparently. I say it's a very simple thing, it's good for you as politician. All right, rather than waiting for people to knock on your door and then you think that you are just dishing out 3,000, 5,000. Have what? 4 calls a year, 3 calls a year, all right? And let everyone vie for it, and then you have, and then you announce who gets the money, all right? And that should be done, and I'm all for that, and I'm lobbying for that. And but we need more people to lobby for that.
Okay, I think this conversation can go on and on because it's such a broad topic that covers so many different aspects in terms of moving forward, moving the art agenda forward. But to wrap up, maybe just a quick question. What's the first thing that comes to your head that you think can be done immediately in moving the art agenda forward? Perhaps also answer it from the standpoint of what you can do personally as well, or what you or your community can do personally in moving the art agenda forward. What's the first thing that comes to your head? Maybe you can, do you think I can start with you?